bonjour les amis, or rebonjour if you're binging this podcast like I've been binging Thanksgiving leftovers. Hey Alannah, did you know it's verboten to say bonjour to the same person twice in one day?
Well, bonjour apparently is allowed, at least according to the people working at our neighborhood shops.
I just find it easier to say salut, which is the equivalent of the Italian ciao. So it can mean hi or bye. You just have to be careful when texting because it's spelled S-A-L-U-T. And you don't want to miss the A. Damn you, autocorrect!
Don't blame autocorrect for that.
Yeah, I know. It's because I type it all the time that it already says slut. Oh, and damn me, because I went into podcast banter before even introducing this yet another thematic episode of The Transplant Kitchen on Paris Underground Radio. I'm your host, Omid Tavallai.
And I am Alannah McPherson, Tavallai.
And together we are Emperor Norton, purveyors of food from California, the American West, and the Pacific Rim. And we bring that food to Parisian cafes, bars, events, and sometimes to potlucks. It's the holiday season, so it's party season, and more specifically, potluck season.
And cookie exchange season.
Are you ready for cookie exchange season? It's a blood sport with your family.
No, my family's cookie exchange is nice.
I don't want to know what the competitive ones are like then.
I have been to some pretty intense cookie exchange parties in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Where the host checks your cookies on your way in the door because she doesn't want crappy cookies out on the table.
Wow.
It is scary stuff.
All right. Well, we'll get back to this cookie fascism because today we're going to talk about the food that you're going to make and bring to all these holiday parties.
Oh, and how to go about it correctly.
Right, because bringing food and drink to a gathering in France can be fraught with peril, danger, fraught with fraughtness. It's there are some lines of etiquette to walk.
Yes.
Many faux pas can be made. As an aside, faux pas. How familiar are you with that term? I mean, you probably grew up using it, sorta. Mm-hmm. Maybe?
Yeah.
So I took 7 years of French, and we never encountered it in French class, but I always saw it used in American English as things you don't do.
Right.
Right?
A misstep.
A misstep, which is literally what it means. Faux, like false,
right.
Pas, step.
Yes.
I did not know that because I always thought it was just short for il ne faut pas, like you shouldn't do. I had no idea that it was faux, false, pas, step.
Yes.
7 years of French. Anyway. That's the American education system for you. So what is a situation where you'd bring food to a gathering in France? I haven't been invited to many potlucks here, except by other Americans. Do the French even do potlucks? Or maybe they're just afraid of my reputation for bringing food that's spicier than mayonnaise?
Well, the French actually call potlucks repas partage, a shared meal, or dîner façon auberge espagnole.
Ooh, I like that. Dîner façon auberge espagnole. Mm-hmm. It's like the movie, L'Auberge Espagnole.
Yes.
Good movie.
So the term comes from the 18th century when Spanish inns, particularly along a certain route, provided a place to stay but no meals, so travelers had to bring their own. It's not always used as a complimentary term, especially in the beginning. It was kind of a this is a crappy situation type of phrase. Maybe
we should go over some guest etiquette. Both French, American. I don't have any manners on either side, so it'd be good for me. It's a good review. So, flowers. What's up with flowers?
Well, flowers are great to bring. Especially in France, they're very appreciated, as you can tell by all the florists on every corner.
I thought it was because of all the apologizing to your significant other for cheating.
They just like flowers in general as a all-purpose, I am bringing you something. But you should not bring mums, because those are associated with funerals.
Ah.
And in the U.S., lilies are often associated with death. I mean, not that you couldn't... I feel like in the U.S., people don't really remember the Victorian ways of meanings of flowers, and people are just like, look, it's shiny, here you go.
Unless you show up to a goth potluck, then somebody's going to know that, oh, you brought me death flowers, thank you.
Yes.
And you can also bring chocolates, I guess?
Yes, chocolates are great. Good chocolates, though.
Good chocolate. So I'm not going to go and buy like some Lindor at the supermarket.
Do not buy...
Or that Lanvin snails from the supermarket.
Do not buy supermarket chocolates and bring them to someone's house. I mean, if it's like just your friends, like people you know really well, they'll probably just get that you're American.
My friends know that I don't buy that shit. So, but generally, you shouldn't bring food when you're coming to like a dinner party or
unless
a cocktail
you have
party.
Been specifically asked to bring food, or if you have contacted the host ahead of time to discuss you bringing food, you should never bring food to someone's house in France.
Why?
Well, because then you put the host in this awkward situation of feeling as if they are obligated to serve the food that you have prepared.
Well, yeah.
And brought with you. But it might not go with the menu of the food that they have prepared. Okay. And that's actually a big deal here.
And maybe don't bring wine either? Or only bring French wine? What's the deal here?
Well, it's kind of the same thing. You can bring wine. Wine is nice. Bringing French wine, because the French are very proud of their wine, understandably. I suppose, as a foreigner, if you brought a wine from your country that was particularly good...
We have lots of good ones in my country.
Yeah, yes.
People here don't seem to think so.
You could probably, again, it's kind of that pulling the American card out of your back pocket and waving it around as an exemption from many social rules and regulations. But you should not expect, if you do bring wine, you should not assume that the host will serve it. You should be thinking of it as a gift to the host because, again, it might not go with the food that they have prepared.
Okay.
And these are all for, like, kind of more formal dinner parties, I would say, because we've been to dinner parties and it seemed like...
Yeah, people brought shit.
It was just kind of a gathering of people and there was food and booze.
But generally the rule is to not show up empty-handed.
Definitely.
It just is here, it's a little more... tight. In the States, it's like, just don't show up empty-handed. Bring anything. Bring, like, napkins. I don't know, but people do. But here it seems like a little more, like, specific what you can and can't bring or what's appreciated and what isn't.
Yeah.
Like, I always bring something spicy anyway because F you. And what's the deal with the toilet thing? You'd mentioned...
Well, so I have not experienced this, but I have definitely been told, and I think among a certain subset of the population in France, it is considered rude to get up to use the toilet during the meal.
I know, yeah. You should go before or after the meal. Even when you go to a restaurant or something. Yes. It's weird to go mid-meal or between courses.
Yes. Although when I was pregnant, you know what?
F it.
It's so sorry, people, but you try having that baby there. But in some circles, it's considered rude to use the toilet at all at someone's house. If you can imagine how long a French dinner party goes...
I'm like, now I understand why when I was biking home from work the other night, this dude was peeing off the balcony onto Boulevard Sebastopol and hit some passersby. Oh, man.
Gross.
He was just at a long dinner party.
That's what it must be.
Yeah. So I think there might be some exceptions to this. I think things might be changing because, so where I work, Red House, on Sundays we do wings and I was still prepping stuff and everything. It was early on. This couple came in to have drinks before going to a dinner party. They saw me making the hot wings and asked when they'd be ready for service. And like, okay, we have time to have a few more drinks. I think they were already hammered at this point, but decided to get an order of hot wings to take to the dinner party to offer the host or hostess, host and hostess, whatever it is, to have as the appetizer, which to me seemed a little, whoa, that's pretty forward for, knowing some of these dinner party rules.
Yeah.
To take something that's not just unsolicited, but also pretty damn spicy.
Yeah.
Maybe stuff is changing now.
I see, it's like sneakers and jeans being something that you see Parisians wearing even at dinner time now.
True.
When we first arrived in France, remember we went
to change out of your...
No, I just remember we were like, oh, let's go out to dinner. And we left the house after dark and we were standing on the metro platform and I suddenly realized that everyone there was now wearing like dress shoes. And I was still standing there in my sneakers because everyone wore sneakers earlier in the day. I didn't realize I had to change my shoes.
It's still a class thing though. I think it's acceptable now because you have sneakers like the Yeezy Boost that cost more than any dress shoe you can imagine. So I think it's that. Speaking of classy, whatever, apparently it's okay to bring champagne to a dinner party or a gathering without being judged for it not going with the host stuff, because it just goes with everything. Yeah.
Yes.
As long as it's already chilled.
I think so.
Otherwise, you're going to put them out to have to ice it and all that. So now that we know the ground rules for communal food gathering, sharing, sort of, whatever, let's go to a potluck. Which brings me back to my original question. Are there potlucks in France? You brought up the repas auberge espagnol, but that seems to be something from the 19th century.
That's current.
How about something apparently even older, but I've read about, because I've never actually seen many of these happening because I don't hang out at churches, the kermesse. What's that?
Okay, so the word kermesse dates to the end of the 14th century and comes from the Flemish kerk. I can't do Flemish, so kerk, which means church, and mis, which means mass. And it was originally a celebration of the founding of the church or the day of the church's patron saint.
Okay.
However, so that was the official beginning of the word, but these celebrations, which were large, drunken, gluttonous,
hence the mess part of it. The hot mess kermesse.
It seems like it. Probably have pagan origins, which sometimes led them to be outlawed. Right.
But the church liked to co-opt pagan stuff to keep the people happy as they went along, as we learned throughout history.
And I guess make them boring, because...
I don't know if they're so boring, because the reason I have read about the kermesse and never been to one, but I've heard of them, is because I'd look in the news and hear about these mass food poisoning events. And they're always linked to a kermesse at some church, like in some podunk town, where somebody ate something, whatever. Like, do people bring, like, oysters or half-cooked meats to these things? Or is it just shit sits out all day?
I haven't been to a church kermesse. However, you've been to at least one kermesse at our daughter's school.
Oh, you mean like the fête de fin d'année? They just, like, don't call it a kermesse because that's associated with church and state, public school, I'm assuming.
No,
Or they still call it a kermesse?
It really depends on the school, because some of my friends' children's schools call it a kermesse.
Oh, okay.
It just is a cultural thing.
I thought it was really cool, because our school is so diverse. And yet, like, the school meals are very standardized or whatever. So it's nice to see the school have, like, different things from different people, especially to see the school staff, because they're of all different origins, and they kind of haven't erased during the school day, whatever. Like, they're not allowed to wear, like, their particular, if they wear a hijab, they wear a hat instead.
Yeah.
They kind of hide where they're from because of the very French républicain, whatever, education. But then at the kermesse, they're serving food from where they're from, and it was awesome to have, like, the variety of stuff.
People from whose families are from Egypt and Morocco and Algeria, and she tells me about, so-and-so's from here, and they were telling me about their food.
Nice. Yeah, we brought sushi, which thankfully did not become a mass food poisoning event.
Oh, it's because we did vegetarian sushi.
That's kapamaki. And then I think the only other time, not in an American context, where I've had to bring food to something here has been picnics. Summertime, picnic on the Pont des Arts, along the Seine, Canal Saint-Martin Park. And I feel weird, because I used to often make something and bring it, and everybody else is bringing, like, chips or, like, little pack of sliced saucisson or some apéricube, just packaged food from the supermarket.
Yeah.
So is it a faux pas for me to be preparing something nice for a picnic? Is it, like, upstaging everyone, or is it just, like, a convenience? Yeah, let's go hang out. And I just do it to my way and people do it to theirs, because not everybody likes to cook.
I think it's the second one. I mean, it's always been very appreciated when I've brought homemade stuff. Very, very appreciated when I've brought homemade stuff to these things. I think, sometimes they're on a weeknight, so people are coming straight from work, and it's just not practical for them to bring stuff. And it's so convenient to pop into various supermarkets or shops to pick up saucisson or cheese or whatever. I mean, like, a lot of the...
Rest in peace, Marks and Spencer.
I know. A lot of the fromageries even have, like, a plateau that you can get with, like, cheese cut up into serving pieces and stuff.
That shit's pretty cool, but I'm talking about the little box of apéricube, like...
Yeah.
And then oftentimes those things aren't voluminous enough for a big eater like me. So I like to make stuff in the volume that I like to eat. I'll bring a vat of potato salad because I'm going to eat half of that myself. So it's not wrong to make stuff for a picnic. It's just more normal to bring a bottle of wine and whatever is near the wine aisle at the supermarket.
I don't really know. No one's told me not to make stuff, so I do.
No one has stopped us.
No one has stopped me yet.
The Transplant Kitchen will be back after a word from our sponsors.
And now, back to the Transplant Kitchen.
On the other hand, I have been to American potlucks. We just had one for Thanksgiving at Red House that, we talked about in a previous episode. And, people often ask, what should I bring? I always tell them what not to bring.
Yes.
Don't bring a baguette. You don't need to bring bread to an American potluck. Unless you made your own, big old sourdough loaf. That'd be kind of cool. Probably got good at it over the lockdown. And, to not bring stuff that they would normally bring to a picnic, but to bring an actual, cooked dish or dessert. So it was pretty interesting. This time around, a French person, their first time coming over for Thanksgiving, brought a poke bowl. What,
A poke bowl?
A poke bowl, like one serving...
A one-serving
poke bowl, like one of those little cardboard takeaway bowls of overcooked rice with salmon on top. And it wasn't even really a poke bowl because the salmon wasn't marinated. It was just kind of salmon sashimi made, Anyway, it was very sweet of her. She didn't know what the deal was. So, a number of us at the potluck had a scoop of rice with some unseasoned raw salmon on top to go with our turkey and stuffing. And it was it was cool.
It seems odd, but I also
the thought that counts.
Don't want to laugh because I am sure as an American, I have done terrible things thinking I was doing the right thing in French circumstances.
Yeah. So I'd say if you are a French person listening to this English language podcast that probably makes a little too much fun of your culture and tolerate us, if you are going to an American potluck, okay, go ahead, bring that poke bowl. Maybe get one of a better quality, but go ahead, get that poke bowl, but bring some, because obviously it's something you like or you thought people would like, which is the important part.
Yes.
But the most important part is bring something that is celebratory to you or that you like to make. Or something you think you kick ass at and you want to show off. This is your time to do it. This is your time to peacock and be like, you know what? I make better stuffed cabbage rolls than anyone else. I'm going to make a tray of fucking cabbage rolls. Do it.
See, to me, a potluck is about sharing.
Right.
So my family, very into potlucks. Everything. Every family gathering is a potluck. Weddings, funerals, births, sickness, Tuesday, Easter, Christmas, everything.
I'm down.
And sometimes you get assigned, if you are really good at something or if people really like it, you don't get to choose what you bring to my family's potlucks. You are just informed that you will be bringing X dish. If you would like to bring something else because you really want to make that, fine, but you don't have the option to not bring the other things. But
again with the fascist food rules. Yeah, so bring what you're good at, what you like, what you want to celebrate with, or apparently what has been assigned to you by your masters. But most of all, if you are inviting French or other non-potluck oriented people to a potluck, just be encouraging with them. Here they've adapted to Halloween. They're sort of getting the hang of Black Friday.
Sort of.
So, I think they'll come around to potlucks. They're coming around to Thanksgiving. Potlucks they're going to happen without it being a pejorative.
You mean American
style potlucks.
Where you bring a very large
That's the
portion.
other thing. Bring a large portion.
Basically, you want to think about how many people are at the event and try
assume
to
that everybody's going to try at least a little of it.
And assume everyone's going to have a serving size of what you're bringing.
Yeah, not an individual poke bowl.
Right.
I want to go off on a poke tangent right now, but I'm biting my lip. We'll do a poke episode sometime and teach people how to make real poke.
No. Let it go.
So going back into what you must bring or are told to bring or have certain standards to meet. The cookie exchange.
Whew,
I never really did the holiday cookie exchange thing until, kind of being annexed into your family. What's the deal with Christmas cookies?
Okay, so if we're going to talk about cookie exchanges, we have to start with Christmas cookies because that's the beginning. Christmas cookies began in the Middle Ages in Europe because spices, dried fruits, sugar, butter became more accessible. However, they were still very expensive, so they were only used generally for holiday times or by like really wealthy people. And then cookies, unlike pies or cake, are dry and relatively hard. Back then, very hard.
They still are.
So they could be easily transported and shared with families, friends, and neighbors. People began exchanging with each other.
So it's not just like a 20th century American thing of like Midwestern people. Oh, here's some cakes and bars and like, I made some of that one you really like with the royal icing.
No.
See, my mind has been blown by Professor Alannah again because I just assumed this was some like middle American thing.
Well, it is. So what happened, the cookie exchange as you know it and experienced it is a very American thing. So cookie exchanges likely came to the U.S. with Dutch settlers in the 17th century who brought their cookies and their tradition of exchanging cookies, but it evolved to the point where in the 1930s, there were actually ads in the paper for cookie exchanges that you could go to.
Oh, just be like publicized like an event. Not like in the classifieds, like we need 3 more people for a cookie exchange.
Like a publicized event for people to go to.
So it was Cookie Palooza. You go book your tickets.
Well,
or you just show up with a bunch of cookies.
I don't really know how it worked. I just saw that there were actually ads. And so the basic setup for an American cookie exchange is you bring a dozen cookies per person participating. So if you're going to a cookie exchange with 12 people,
you need to make 144 cookies.
Yes.
Look at that math. Did you see how quickly I did 12 by 12? Rain Man shit, man. All right, that's
and then the
basic.
Cookies that Americans tend to make are generally from the Dutch, Germans, Scandinavians, many of whom settled in
the Midwest.
There you go. So this is why you think that the cookie exchange is this very Midwestern, because it is, but not originally. It grew into
It has its roots in the old world.
It does. Okay. Along with all the cookies, most of the cookies.
Yeah, they all seem very old-fashioned and, like in a good way, in a homey way. Although, I didn't know that they had Christmas cookies here, or as they call them here, gâteau de Noël, which gâteau literally means cakes. I don't know how that differentiates it from cookies,
well, do you know
all
why
baked goods.
Cookies are called gâteau in French?
Because of biscuit, which means cooked twice.
Yes. Well, biscuit usually indicates... Usually, they get all jumbled up, the terms, but it usually means a hard, crunchy cookie. Mm-hmm. And a gâteau is usually used for a softer textured cookie. But cookies, basically, in the beginning, were just cakes cooked longer or twice.
Like a biscotti.
Yeah. And some say that cookies actually started from before we had a way to check the temperature of our ovens.
That absolutely makes sense.
So you would take some of your cake batter or dough and put it in the oven to check to see if it was ready.
Why wasn't this historical nugget in our cookie episode a few episodes back? That's fascinating.
Right?
Wow, cool. Yeah, I didn't even know that. Sorry, going back to what I was saying. I didn't even know that Christmas cookies were a thing here, other than what I'd seen at the Christmas market sometime, and you have the faux German stand selling like some shitty version of Stollen. Mm. And I just thought that was what you got for Christmas cookies here, unbeknownst to me, because you gave me, long before we started actually like cooking and baking things for a living, you gave me a big like tin box of homemade Christmas cookies to take to work.
Oh, yes.
So I arrived with that to share with my coworkers. It's sitting on my desk until it's time to share it with them at the l'heure du goûter in the afternoon. And so a couple of people asked me, and I was like, oh, are you planning on doing some sewing at lunchtime? Because apparently it is absolutely universal that a tin cookie box means sewing kit. So yeah, but I think we may have helped bring the cookie exchange here in a manner, because I opened the thing cookies and everyone's like, oh, Christmas cookies. Like, oh, you know what these are? Of course. You know, it's like, how come in however many years here, I've never seen anybody with like these kind of Christmas cookies? Like, oh, that's just something you do at home with your family. I guess they don't commercialize everything like we Americans do. So I didn't even know that all these Christmas cookies existed here until I brought that box that you made to my coworkers. I was like, oh yeah, Christmas cookies. I love Christmas cookies. And of course, because it's supposed to be reciprocal, like a cookie exchange, over the ensuing couple of weeks, a lot of other people in the office started bringing in boxes of Christmas cookies and shared them because that one you sent in with me. And so otherwise, I never would have been able to have that experience of doing like, it wasn't quite a cookie exchange, but like sharing a bunch of Christmas cookies with French coworkers because it's a family thing and not like a work thing or whatever. Who knew? Yeah. I certainly didn't, but it was pretty cool. But also, and also last week at the Thanksgiving potluck, you sent me with a pie in a pie-shaped tin. And the first thing I was asked was, is that a sewing kit or pastries? By an Australian. So, universal.
Wow.
Universal, the whole sewing kit.
You know, the metal tin really is good for keeping your sewing supplies in.
But you know what else it's good for? Cookies. Yeah. So put cookies in them. Speaking of work. Yes. Now, you've not worked at a French job here, I don't think.
I have
You've
not.
worked at a couple places, but like short term.
I've done some short stints in a few cafes, restaurants helping out, but never an office in France.
So, in an office or many other workplaces, when you have decided to leave the job, you do a pot de départ, pot as in pot, so like a parting drink. So I didn't know until the later part of my corporate career that when you have a pot de départ, you pay for and bring the food and drinks. You're hosting the party.
Really?
Yeah, which is weird because you think goodbye party, the company, or like your coworkers would gather and pitch in.
Yeah.
So
we all get together and buy them a lot of drinks.
Which is probably why it was always like, almost invariably people would get some kind of bubbly. Not champagne because it's too expensive, but some kind of bubbly. Which is fine because I think the greater part of champagnes are just not worth the price. That's just my opinion. And there'd be like some chips or some pretzels or some of those apéro, the same shit you bring to a picnic.
Yeah.
Where you spent like €4 on the thing. I always thought, man, my company is cheap. Or, ooh, their department is cheap. It turns out, no. You have to dig in out of your own shitty salary to get stuff for your own goodbye party.
That's so weird.
Yeah, so I never had a pot de départ because you know the circumstances of my departure from the corporate world.
Yeah.
But had I had one, I would have probably brought on like a full-on catering style spread as a big like, F you. This is what I'm going on to. But yeah, guys, if you're doing a pot de départ and you have to bring your own stuff, fancy it up a bit because it's your last chance to show up your other coworkers before you leave. You're shaking your head at me. This happens often. If we had a camera on how often Alannah shakes her head or rolls her eyes at me when we're recording these.
Yeah.
Speaking of départ, how about we give you a parting not recipe for your cookie exchange or just holiday cookies you're going to make anyway? Because I mentioned royal icing earlier. What do you think of royal icing, Alannah?
I'm not a fan.
What is royal icing? What makes it royal?
I don't know.
It's like egg whites and sugar and food coloring, right?
Powdered sugar.
Powdered sugar. Okay.
I think.
But that's the stuff they squeeze onto holiday cookies. Like you make drawings onto Christmas cookies with that.
People like to use it because it dries hard.
Okay.
And because you can have it be thicker to kind of stand up and have a shape, or you can thin it out quite a bit and have it be runny, and so it kind of fills and you can make really great designs and stuff. But to me, royal icing is one of those things that benefits the person making it and not the person eating it.
Oh.
Which happens a lot with pastry, I find.
Happens with a lot of food that's made and sold here.
Yeah. Well, in general, I think people a lot of times are like, this is a great way to do X, and then don't take that extra step to stop and think, what is the experience of eating this?
The Transplant Kitchen will be back after a word from our sponsors.
And now, back to the Transplant Kitchen.
So, what is your solution for decorating cookies that will also please the door person at the cookie exchange that's making sure your stuff is up to snuff?
So I use American buttercream.
American buttercream. Like Betty Crocker can buttercream.
Well, I make my own, but...
You make your own?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to tell us how you make it so that we save people from buying that Betty Crocker shit?
He really wanted me to have... He was like, just give him your recipe. And I said, my recipe is I take my medium-sized glass bowl and I fill it 2/3 of the way with... I fill it halfway with butter. And I mix that up with the mixer to soften up the butter, and then I add a bunch of powdered sugar until it seems like it's really thick, like mashed potatoes, and then I add a bit of milk until it's the consistency I want, and then I add salt. But that's not a great recipe to share with people because nobody has my medium-sized glass bowl.
How do you know that?
I mean, it is a Pyrex. Great. Yeah. I love it. I love that bowl. But so I actually have something with measurements from the Better Homes and Gardens cookbook, which was what my mom always used when I was growing up.
So it's probably what you got by osmosis.
It is most likely.
And it's kind of what your recipe
what I am trying to create on my own.
All right. So let's have it so people can properly ice their holiday cookies.
So this will make a lot of frosting. This will make enough for like a 2-layer cake. To frost the top, the middle, and the sides.
And how many cookies is that?
That's a really good question.
So make a cake for your holiday cookie exchange.
No, but I don't know. They always say that for frosting. They always say it's good to cover this amount of cake, and then...
Okay. Anyway, it makes a lot of frosting from what I've seen you make, yeah.
So you're going to have 227 grams of butter, which sounds like a weird amount, but it's because it's 1 cup of butter.
American. And do you do the 15% thing for this or no?
No.
Because it's just straight butter.
Just straight butter.
All right.
So, and then between 520 to 650 grams of powdered sugar.
No, sucre glace.
Yes.
Or icing sugar if you're British.
Not sucre en poudre.
Yeah, not sucre en
poudre.
Don't
make that mistake.
That's granulated sugar.
And then you're going to add, and so you're going to mix up the butter first, cream the butter, then add the powdered sugar gradually. Don't add it all in at one time and then put the mixer in because you will be covered in a cloud of powdered sugar. So you're going to mix it in slowly and carefully. And then once that's done, you're going to have a pretty thick consistency mixture to which you're going to add 3 tablespoons of milk or cream.
And do you do that all at once or just like drop by drop?
No, that you can do all at once.
Okay.
And then you're going to stop and check your texture because you want something that's spreadable. If you thin it out a little bit, it's great for piping. If you thin it out a lot, you can actually use it as kind of a fill in a cookie or a glaze. Mm-hmm.
And then you add food coloring, obviously.
Yes, to make it different. Usually what I do with my daughter when I'm making rainbow icing for cupcakes is you portion up this mixture into different bowls to which you then add the food coloring.
Right. And then put each of those in a little pastry bag or something to
if you're making if you're just making one color, you can actually add your food coloring at the same time you add the milk or cream.
Okay.
To make your life easier. But the one really important thing not to forget, because a lot of people really don't like American buttercream because it is really sweet.
It's cloyingly sweet.
Super sweet with all of the...
Yeah, this is why I'm surprised you say you use American buttercream for your Christmas cookies, because they taste fucking good.
Is you need to add salt.
How much salt?
More salt than you think.
More salt. It should taste a little salty when you taste it. Not just that like salt that makes things taste sweeter, but like salt where it actually tastes a little bit salty, like salted butter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You kind of want the same level of salt as you get in like salted caramel, where there's actually a saltiness to it.
That you can actually taste the saltiness to it. Okay, great. So now you have that buttercream recipe, so you can forego the royal icing when making your Christmas cookies. So that Christmas cookie exchange you're going to go to. And you're going to win the Christmas exchange because it's a sport, right? So the winner for me, though, honestly, is like just, again, kind of like with the potluck thing. Do something that's you and that's creative. I think it was last Christmas, our daughter Fiona did those viral Baby Yoda Grogu Christmas cookies where you take the cutout of an angel and then cut the head halo part off. So it looks like a little Baby Yoda. And you frost it with like some brown and green and give it the little eyes. You know, she's 6 years old, so it was a fucking mess, but it was just so cute. And the effort was so awesome. It was just like so adorable. And then she took a gingerbread man one and made one of me with like, you know, my black hair and black clothes and It was basically a whole bunch of black frosting on a gingerbread man cookie, but it was just so sweet. And to me, okay, I'm biased because this is my own daughter, but to me, the efforts like that are what are gonna win a competitive cookie exchange. The stuff that's a little off the wall and not necessarily perfect, but good. Anyway, as usual, share your creations with us on Instagram and tag us. We can be found at Nortion of Paris on Instagram. I'm personally at Tavallai, Tavallai, my family name.
And I'm at Hannala, which is my first name backwards.
And beyond sharing your creations with us, feel free to invite us to your holiday potluck. We probably won't be able to make it because we're pretty damn busy, but it's always nice to be invited. The Transplant Kitchen is a production of Paris Underground Radio. Check out other podcasts on the Paris Underground Radio Network by visiting parisundergroundradio.com or subscribing to and following the channel on your favorite podcast platform. And you can also help us out by rating and reviewing us. Apparently, reviews only show up in the countries for which they're written on Apple Podcasts. So we have a whole bunch in France. I know we have a lot of listeners in the US, but I don't see any reviews in the US. So American listeners, feel free to go and pop a little review on there. It helps us out. We want to become worldwide media superstars. No, we don't. But we would like to grow our audience. So please feel free to help out in that way. And we will see you next time in The Transplant Kitchen.
Bye.